Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Blueprints and Banter. I am your host, Steve Kona, President and CEO of ABC Florida Gulf Coast Chapter, and I'm joined by my co-host, the Chairman of the Board, David Tercios.
Hey, Steve. Appreciate the intro. My name is David Tercios. I'm the Vice President of Tampa Operations for the Ginyard Company, and I am your Chairman for 2024. Before we get started today, I want to quickly give a big thank you to the Diamond Level Advantage Club sponsors, who for 2024 are Callista Cabinets, the Ginyard Company, Milwaukee Tools, and Piper Fire Protection. It is their financial support that allows us to bring content like this podcast to our members.
Yep. No, it's awesome that we have amazing members who participate in the process and help us do these very informative and cool things, especially this podcast. So today we have a very, very special guest. I'm excited to have J.C. Hudgison, the Chief Building Official for the City of Tampa, on with us today as our special guest. J.C., welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. You bet. No, it's exciting. Obviously, Tampa is over the top booming in construction, and you are the one who helps get everything permitted and lined up. So let's talk about just the amount of volume that you're seeing at the City of Tampa as far as commercial permits go.
So CSD has issued 127,000 permits since FY 2018. So that's 2018, 2019, averaging about 25,000 permits a year for the past 5 years.
Wow.
In that same time span, the building permit value, which is the contractors provide to us of the value, is $19.4 billion. Obviously, a higher total building permit value is a stronger construction market and a local economy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And our folks are super busy, and I think the pipeline is going to continue with all the growth that we're having. Dave, I know you have a question.
Yeah, so JC, I was wondering if you could share with us, what can the contractors do on their end to help speed up the process once the applications get to your desk?
So I've got four big ones, five. One, obviously, we're starting this year in the new Florida Building Code. So obviously making sure that your plans have the newest code designation on it. Sometimes we still get some in that say 7th edition. And unfortunately for us, that's one of our first telltale signs to say, hey, make sure you have updated codes and updated references. Two, I tell a lot of contractors to check your email. Acela sends automatic notices to say, hey, in review or fees are due or things like that. And so don't spam us. I know it comes from Acela and you get all kinds of messages all day, but kind of make sure you're checking your email to kind of make sure you're getting that information. One of the bigger things for us is trying to handle those issues outside of CSD. We're kind of the last stop before you get a permit. So ideally, if there's something that you need to get handled with zoning, something, if you're along a major thoroughfare and need to get resolved with FDOT, our local right of way, any utility issues, it's like if you get those things done before you get to us, it makes our job easier. We're just checking the box to say that you've gone through that process. And probably one of the bigger things, especially, I've talked to you guys kind of prior to the show about where I'm from, but coming to Florida, dealing with flood requirements. The city of Tampa has 138,000 parcels and 48,000 of them are in a special flood hazard area. So that's almost a third of the properties in Tampa have some type of flood requirement. And being aware of that and knowing what you need to have prior to coming to see us makes that process easier. We hate to say that you've got to elevate your electrical services, if you got to elevate things above the BFE, but to be compliant and continue to receive NFIP discounts on insurance and things like that, those types of things are important.
I guess as a quick follow-up to that answer, I appreciate that response. Is there one location where these people can go to make sure they're seeing the most current laws and requirements and whatnot?
So for flood specifically, yes, we have we've adopted the program called Forerunner. It is kind of I nicknamed it our flood Google. You can type in an address. It'll tell you exactly what it is in the floodplain, what the BFE is, if there's any other special hazards that you need to be aware of. That's available at tampa.gov/flood info. You go right to that link. You can type it in, whether if you have an active project or you're interested in acquiring a property and you want to see what concerns you may have to deal with at that property. The old way, you kind of have to search through panels. It's kind of painstaking. You kind of just I'll just send it to the building department and they'll tell me what's wrong. But ideally, we tried to make it a little bit more user facing and GIS oriented, so you can be able to look at that information yourself and get that information.
I'd imagine that's a good way for people to not be surprised, and then, like you said, once it comes to you, it hopefully is already packaged up better.
Yeah,
correct.
Now, I know, JC, you guys are doing a lot of investing. You're doing a lot of hiring, trying to get more building officials in the mix, inspectors and whatnot. So what are you guys doing at the city? What do you want to highlight and spotlight to kind of increase the quality of service and speed to permit? Because that's, for us, it's crucial with our labor shortage, being able to deliver work and get the permits on time and go through the inspection processes and all of that's crucial to us. So what are you guys doing to help with quality of service and speeding up the permitting time?
So on that, what we've done specifically for higher profile projects, we started to create actual project teams. So obviously, if TGH or the port or sports authority or the airport, they're not getting a different plan review team. They're getting the same people. So that consistency of, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Oh, I've dealt with this guy before. I know what he's looking for a set of plans. So we've tried to kind of focus more on providing those project teams. Kind of as I mentioned before about the things that are missing, we've created a sufficiency checklist. You can just pull it right off of our website. And these are the things outside of us, kind of like HCAA and height requirements and those things that you need to have done before you come to see us. Unfortunately, we can't issue the permit. So we've created that. Our metrics dashboard is now online, tampa.gov/metrics. You can go there to see our KPIs for our intake. Our intake is supposed to be is set to 90% of the time, 3 days or less. Our inspections are set for 2 days or less at 90% of the time. And then our plan review varies between 7 to 10 days to 14 to 21, depending on the scale of the project. If it's a large scale project, obviously the amount of time staff takes to look at a strip center is not the same that they need to look at a hospital or the same that they need to look at a high rise. So ideally we're adjusting those times and meeting those deadlines. Another big thing is we've increased is the field revision. Ideally in some of these projects, if it's non-structural and there are minor changes, per state law, we have to have a as-built. We have to have, this is what's actually on this site. And so being able to work with staff to kind of put that in an inspector's hand. If the inspector sees something out there that it's something minor, instead of sending it through our whole plan review process, the inspector can see it and within 72 hours approve that revision and you guys are still moving forward. So trying to kind of cut those times down as best we can. One thing I didn't get to is our PPRs, which is our pre-plan review. It's managed kind of out of our large scale projects. So any of our bigger assembly projects, bigger high rises, the intent there is to get people in front of those projects. So, when you submit to a seller, you guys have been working on this project for months and months and months, and you submit it to us and, you expect us to know it inside and out. And we're like, yeah, we're just not seeing this 3-story, 35,000 square foot building. We got some comments. And ideally the PPR process is to get us in early. We try to suggest it around 60% design development. You get to see everybody, fires in there, right of way, water, utility, solid waste. So everybody's have seen this project. So then when it comes in for the actual permit, everyone's on the same board. You get the same plan review team that looked at it prior to it coming in. So that consistency is there. Oh, I remember this project. This was X, Y, and Z. And so some of that familiarity with the project helps it get through the process easier. And we don't have to ask some of those questions because we've already asked them. You're aware of them. You guys have been able to answer them. So between those things, those are really what we're trying to do to improve the quality of service and help with permitting times.
Yeah, I think those large scale projects, that's a big deal. And you guys, how many people do you think are taking advantage of that? And if folks are just hearing that for the
hey, how close can this be here? Or do we need to get some kind of revision to or do we need to go see zoning for X, Y, and Z? So sometimes we're fine to meet with them prior to it, having a full set of plans. But we just really, when we get it, we want to be comfortable enough and be able to get it through the process as fast as possible.
That's amazing. I think that's going to pay off for not only you guys, obviously, but for the contractors as well. So I'm
process definitely.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, JC, just kind of curious. Does the city implement? Do they use any kind of AI when it comes to reviewing the plans, or are there any plans to look at that? I know some other municipalities in the area are starting to lean that way.
Yeah, so we've done some initial feelers. We've talked to a few different companies per se to just kind of see how that's working. And as you mentioned, other jurisdictions. Like I said, we're trying to make this as efficient as possible. And if it's less things that staff has to look at and they can focus more on those performance issues, those things that aren't black and white, that aren't fixed numbers, like, listen, we're all on board. So trying to, some of those things, the cities usually aren't the early adopters, when things finally start rolling, so ideally, because, digital plan room used to be, unheard of before. Like everything that you had to submit a roll of papers into the building department and you had to break them up and it was sitting on somebody's desk. And, that used to be the way of the world. And now that we've moved to digital plan room, and like I said, I think COVID showed us a lot of things too. It was like, hey, you don't have to have everything in person. You don't have to have everything on a piece of paper, that things can be handled digitally. So it's really good to see this technology. Like I said, we've been working with Acela, which is our current permit vendor. That's who provides our permits, and with other groups to kind of see how they can integrate with Acela to kind of help us with that. Or is it a standalone program? So we've been looking at different options. Like I said, it's just, we feel it's a bit early. We've talked to a few jurisdictions and they've kind of told us the positives and negatives of it. And so I think it's going to be sooner than later. It's just trying to figure out the right system that works with our system currently, so we don't feel like we're kind of having to restart or go backwards in other things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What I like about since you've been the chief building official, there's been a lot of advisory groups that you guys have. I mean, you just had a meeting with the design professionals. You have a contractors group. If somebody wants to get on one of these advisory boards that you guys have, not really boards, but groups. If they want to get on those groups, how do they get on those groups, and what do they need to do?
All they have to do is send me an email. As soon as they send me an email, we get them added. We have, as you mentioned, we have our architects and engineers. Then we have our contractors and developers, and then Eric Cotton with zoning does the land developers and attorneys, kind of land use attorneys on that side. And so the intent there is, I'd rather over communicate. I'd rather let people know, hey, this meeting's coming up. What questions? Because, we're kind of in our government box, and it's like, this is how we handle things. You all on the outside may be seeing something differently. Hey, this is not how we're seeing it, or this is not how this is affecting us. And so, we try to have that open forum to say, hey, do you have questions? Do you have things you want to ask us, about the process? Or if I have something coming, and I've talked to you about this, Steve, as well, is to say, hey, I don't want to be like, hey, new changes effective tomorrow. Like, I try to send out notices. I try to send out emails to try to give you, 60, 90, 120. Like I said, if it comes from Florida statute, that's different. But usually if it's policy issues dealing with the city, we try to kind of telegraph that as best we can, because we don't want people to be surprised if you're in the project and there's a way potentially to grandfather it. We try to work with you on that as well. So, but it's just like, hey, these things are coming, or as you mentioned in the last meeting, we talked about new technologies that we're moving forward with. One of the ones I didn't even mention is select text. What we want to do is to allow the text to permit situation to be for your inspections. So ideally, if you're scheduling an inspection, electrical rough is inspection 171. You text in 171 on your location, put your BLD in. It goes through Acela, schedules it for you. You don't have to go all the way stumbling through Acela to try to do it. And then you get your result right there. So when your drywall guy is ready to come and start covering stuff up, and he can't because he's waiting on all those trade finals, he knows exactly when it's time to go. So, those type of technologies we want to be able to use and implement. And so I get in front of those groups. We also meet with the home builders as well. And, if we want to do something else with your group as well, I'm fine to reach out and have those meetings and have those discussions. The more communication, the better it is for everybody.
Yep. No, for sure. So two things I want to talk about and cover, because, I think they're interesting. We've done a lot of work in Tallahassee. A lot of work is happening to kind of make sure that condos are keeping pace with, making sure that, they're well maintained. So now there's a condo recertification process. You want to talk about that a little bit and how it's just now kind of getting kicked off and what you're seeing there?
Sure. So, Florida Statute 553-899 is mandatory structural inspections for condos and cooperative buildings. And so that's any building in our city limits. Well, for me, I'm responsible for the city limits. Any building that has reached 30 years of age and is 3 stories or more tall. So, any high-rise older condos and things like that, obviously due to Surfside and those issues, they want to make sure that the structural stability of that building is still sufficient after all of these years. And so, the city is the repository. We're not the one actually, doing the inspections. The condo association hires a structural engineer and architect to go out, review the building, give us what's called a phase run report. That phase run report says, hey, we're good to go. There's no problem. However, if they come back and say, hey, there's substantial structural deterioration, that moves to a level 2. And then, okay, that level 2 may lead to some demolition or potential permits to fix the issue. So then it kind of gets back in our BLD process to resolve those issues. So, but for us, it's just, putting it out there that they have to have all of those inspections done by December 31st of 2024. So the end of this year, those structures are supposed to be reviewed. Right now, we're looking at about 38 to 40 structures that fall in at 30 years or older. Now we'll say those are 38 to 40 that have self-reported. We're starting to do some additional research on some that may not have reported to DBPR. So we're kind of going through that process. We did the people who volunteered that information, we're reaching out to them first, and we're starting to go back through now for the ones that may not have reported to let them know that they are also required to provide those same inspections.
Yeah. And I know you're not in charge of Pinellas County, but I'm sure they have a lot of beach condos that are getting ready to go through a lot of process.
Yeah, they're probably triple my number, quadruple, I think almost. Like I said, we're kind of a little bit more inland, but yeah, we've been kind of going back and forth because ideally we wanted to be even across the Tampa Bay area. A lot of us building officials, just like you guys we talk. So it's trying to make sure we're trying to be as consistent as we can. We're like, hey, JC, what are you doing over there? Or, hey, I'm talking to Eve over at Pinellas County. Hey, how y'all? And so we're talking to kind of make sure we're trying to be as consistent as we can. They were like, are you changing anything in the ordinance for 553? I said, nope, I'm keeping it verbatim, exactly how it comes out of Tallahassee, not trying to add anything there. I think they may add some because 25 years, because they do have a little bit more salt water. They are dealing with the actual, so they may have a little different. They may look at the 25 years, but we stuck to the 30. But per the statute, what's required, what's being done, we're all trying to be as same as we can.
Yeah, that's great. The last thing that I found interesting is the new artificial turf process that you guys are implementing. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's been a labor of love over the last 18 months is, just trying to, for us, just be as consistent as we can with what's being installed. Ideally, there's not a licensure for artificial turf or turf installers. However, incorrect installations have had negative effects on your adjacent neighbors for runoff, for protection of trees running into the right of way, now conflicting with utility work that may be happening along that street, things like that. So we worked with some artificial turf vendors over the last literally 18 months, kind of going over something that we would be comfortable with. Like I said, I tell them all the time, it's a living document. It's a policy. It's not codified anywhere. It's just trying to find a way to be more consistent with it. We held workshops in October with the turf vendors. We had about 12 different turf vendors come in to learn, hey, this is how you use a cellar, going through this because, they haven't really had to do that permitting process before. So we tried to kind of educate them as best we can, try to give them some cheat sheets. If they're looking at site plans, to try to use a cellar as your guide. If it's a new house and that new owner wants to do it and it's been built before 2015, guess what? We got a plan for it. So look it up, search that address, print that site plan, and just kind of superimpose. As long as it's not over to 50%, that triggers stormwater retention. If you declare it to be permeable, let us know, and it's not affecting the grade. So, because that's the only thing we want to make sure. We're making sure that you're not negatively affecting your neighbors. So as long as they can show that they haven't changed the grade, everything stayed the same. It's just, that's just a part of the checks and balances.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's plenty of folks that, got in under the radar, right, before this process. No, that's interesting. But no, I think it's good. I think it's an important thing. I think you're seeing more people do the artificial turf now because it's just so much more cost effective long term. especially for commercial properties, right?
Yes, yes.
No, so that's great. But JC, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today and to be on the podcast. You guys have always been pretty open and honest with us, and we appreciate that you're open to feedback and anything that we can do to make the process better for you, better for us. It's going to make Tampa a much better place to build. So thank you for your time today, and we appreciate it.
What's the best way people can get a hold of you?
My email is jc.hudgison, HUDGISON, @tampagov.net. And my office number, 813-274-1284. You may hear a kind British lady. That is my assistant, Michelle. She is amazing. She keeps my schedule halfway sane, so I don't lose any more hair that I have. So she does a great job to kind of keep me oriented. And like I said, if you just want to have a one-on-one meeting with me, if you just have concerns, please email and reach out. Like I said, we don't know what we don't know. We can't help if it's something we're not aware of and we don't know what's going on. Now, sometimes it may not be the answer you like. Ideally, if it's a Florida building code, or if it's a statute, or if it's a zoning requirement, it is what it is. But ideally, we do try to work with everyone to try to make sure that we can find the best way to help everybody. And like I said, we want to keep this economy going, and we want to be able to be a part of that, a positive part of that.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you for your time today.
All right.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
All right.
So Dave, looking back, I know it's pretty good. That was. He shared some things that I wasn't aware of. I knew the statute was coming down from Tallahassee in regard to looking at these tall buildings, these older buildings. I didn't realize it was being implemented already, nor did I understand, or did I know that it was a process that needed to be done by the end of this year. So
yeah,
that's interesting. It seems like he's on top of things. He said he's been in that role since 2020. Seems like he's been implementing a lot of changes, trying to make the whole process smoother for everybody. I like his open door policy that he alluded to. I think contractors and property owners in general will probably appreciate his candidness and willingness to listen to what problems they're having and what they're trying to accomplish and work together to resolve it.
Yeah, and our goal is, right, we want to just make sure that we're creating an environment where we get things built quickly. And I think they're open to those discussions. And I think some of the stuff that they're doing, especially on larger projects, bringing in the permitting folks early on in the design process, I think that's super helpful to move things along.
Sure, yeah. Our members, they want to build stuff. They don't want red tape in the way. They don't want delays. So I think if everyone knows what the rules are and it's outlined, and there's a goal to get through it as quickly and efficiently as possible, I think everyone will benefit from that.
And I think when we talk about our labor shortage, they have a tremendous labor shortage as well, finding inspectors, finding permit reviewers. So the challenge is real. And I'm glad that you brought up the AI stuff, because that's something I think is really going to help them in the long run. So I hope they adopt that a little earlier than later.
Yeah, he said they're looking into it already, and I understand being cautious about it. I mean, that AI stuff is cool and scary all in one.
Mm-hmm.
But for stuff like this, I think you could really help speed up that process. The AI going through and just checking common things that don't, as he said, require a lot of attention.
Yeah,
that's good.
And I know Pasco's been doing it, and they're looking to expand it. So it only takes a little bit before people start catching on to it. But sure. I do think it's going to change the review process for sure when it comes to permitting.
Yeah. So you want to talk about looking forward?
Yeah.
This is our third episode.
It's our third episode.
So in our next episode, we're looking to kind of do a wrap up of what's going on in Tallahassee. The legislative session is in the process of winding down right now. So our next episode, we hope to be able to talk what did happen, and maybe even have some guests.
Yeah.
Some bill sponsors, maybe.
Yeah.
People who help ABC in this whole process.
Yeah. So we'll have our lobbying team. We'll have maybe, like I said, some of our representatives who have helped push our agenda and got some bills passed this year. Lots of exciting things are happening in Tallahassee. Everything's moving. So we're grateful. So we're going to have a great update next month.
ABC champions.
Yep, for sure. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. We'd like to keep these things, about 35 minutes or so, just to make sure that, you're informed. with everything that's going on. So we appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on Blueprints of Banter, and we'll see you again next month.
Take care.